Okay, we are at current two, which is probably the most signature of the six currents of the feminine, because so many of spiritual traditions and religious paths have focused on the ascension, the moving out of our body, that this is like hampering our experience here. And if we could just drop this whole like meat bag that we live in, then we could like be okay. And however, on the other side, in some spiritual traditions, there is emphasis on the fact that having a body experiencing mortality and the fullness of our humanity is one of the most important points of our experience on earth. And the path of the feminine is not about the ascension, it's about the descension, about clearing out what is old, no longer useful, what maybe doesn't belong to us. It's about hearing and healing in the body, and also sourcing the body for our growth, for our experiencing, as a source of like intuition and true north. Is even in a lot of those spiritual traditions, receiving guidance still has this embodied language to it, that we feel it. We feel it through our system, through our energy. And especially, I love the path of Tantra, which also is where we get the chakra system from, and understanding those systems together helps me put really bodied language and location to where I am trying to expand, where I am trying to learn myself and have access to more of myself. So this path of the masculine, of like progress and ascension and like space and consciousness, is so needed and wonderful, but we focus on the body here because it is like the masculine, or like the feminine, has been largely ignored. And so our return here, our return into our body, is just bringing balance to the whole thing. Especially in Western society, we have this tendency to really think we have more safety in the realm of our mind. That's what we can rationally explain and understand. Then also, if we're not dropping into our body, oftentimes we feel like we're protected from a lot of those difficult emotions that live in us, from those deep feelings, so deep, wounding shadow. But when we do that, then we are also limiting the current of joy that we can experience, or love, or power, whatever it is. If we are only limiting our experiencing of the world to here, then we are missing out on so much that's available to us. And so embodiment is dropping in and learning how to move our awareness from outside of ourselves. Especially women, we often have trouble with this because we are so used to thinking about how we are being viewed. And that is not a problem with you. That is through generations of conditioning. That's where we get safety and worth from. And for me, it was the path of yoga, where that was the most valuable thing that I learned from yoga, was how to stop self-objectifying and viewing my body only as how it could be seen, and learn how to move my awareness back into my body to focus on sensation and movement and how it actually felt to be me and move through my life. And I feel like a lot more people are good at this point than I was then. And we have had a lot more dialogue around that. But that was a transformative ability for me, was to know what it felt like to have my own awareness inside of me instead of projecting it outward and just thinking about how I appeared. So that is part of embodiment, is actually occupying our physicality, like living here instead of out here, seeing ourselves. Another part of embodiment is that we see our experience as possibly regenerative. is that this unhealed masculine that we've lived in society is productive, but also often comes at a cost of burnout, of productivity at the expense of everything else, of this glorification of busyness. Whereas when we focus on our body first, how we actually feel moving through our life, then we multiply the energy, the intelligence that we have access to. And it's this revolutionary act that we decide that we get to feel good and take up space and that we're worth that. And that life is not this zero sum game where in order to win, somebody has to lose. That is a signature to the feminine, is that we want to take everybody, and we want to take everybody into feeling well, into prospering, flourishing together. So that also means you get to take yourself in your real body and prioritize feeling good in your body, doing the things in your body that allow you to function at your fullest expression, to see your life as, if your energy is low, then like what's happening, because your natural state is not deficiency. It's like radiance and magnetism and enthusiasm. So what has been layered on top of that if that is not how you feel? And I have gone through times, the time of recording this, where I am deeply trying to peel off those layers and figure out the body first, because all my best ideas, everything like that gets produced from me feeling good and feeling into my body. So we get to look at being in our body as nourishing and regenerating, but also that it is on our side. That we literally have this like true north guidance system. And we all have felt those times where we've been in the presence of like somebody that wasn't good for us, and we like contract, or someone asked us to do something, contract, or someone asked us to do something and we expand into it. That was a recent experience of mine as well, is that I was asked to do this thing that was not directly related to my immediate goals, but it sounded so fun and expansive. And so that's a yes. And it doesn't have to make sense up here. I get to ask my body. And we get to ask our body these really deep questions about things like, should I continue in this relationship? Should I take this job? Our body is our most trustworthy source of actually being able to interpret the information from our highest self, from the divine, whatever that is for you. We actually learn how it feels for us. So another point about this is because we want to like talk about it. We like the words. We like living in the realm of our Zoom screens where we are like a brain and that is it. But embodiment and actually leveraging using our body for our earthly experience to our advantage means that we don't have to put reason and language to everything. So we let ourselves know what we know without having to explain it, without having to understand why. We can feel sensations that come up for us and think like, oh, I don't know what that is. I think it has something to do with this. And we can move it through like dancing it out, literally like feeling that energy shift. And a signature part of this embodiment practice and what I teach in all the things we do is it's not just talking it out. It's not just understanding what's happening for us at an intellectual level. We are literally entering through the realm of the body to heal the issues in our tissues, to see what lives in our womb from generations, to really do that ancestral, that personal healing and enter in from the realm of the body. And so whenever we are doing like visualization together, those meditative journeys are very embodied, even though we're working in our imagination. This week, we are really going to focus on dance. And that sounds like But that is a signature modality of healing in the path of the feminine, because it allows us to let our body lead. And so it's not dance as in performative, or that it looks a certain way, or that we're following certain steps. It's that we are letting our bodies express to music and actually opening up those spaces where we start to feel what's in there. And then once we feel it, we can start to move it. So when I used to teach yoga very regularly, and I would teach a style called yin that is really slow and meditative, and you're opening up fascia and staying in poses for a long time, I would give a disclaimer before every class and say, most likely someone will cry. It might be you. That's okay. That's totally normal, because when we start to open up these long stored places in our bodies, stuff starts to come up that we think we've like crammed down into there. And when we add this dimension of music, that becomes an even more embodied experience, because we're using more of our senses. We're feeling it through our heart. We're using our ears, and we're letting our body lead, and also learning how to drop our awareness into ourselves. And it's generally important, like maybe you can dance with friends and sisters, but it's also really important that we have this as a solo practice, where we can drop the idea of looking a certain way and start to move energy. So a lot of people come to my programs looking for more enthusiasm, more joy, like more something in their life, more feeling like themselves. And sometimes when we just focus on that dimension, and we are going to later when we talk about soul essence of using that as fuel, but without moving all like the grief or rage that we also have in our body, then sometimes we can't access that joy, that like eros in our body, that enthusiasm, that essence of who we are. And so with our practice this week, we are going to drop in and start to move those things. And if you were in at the time of recording this, we just worked through reignition together and with the free workshops. And even the skeptics, oftentimes when we start to actually practice this, things come up, things move. We actually allow ourselves to feel all the way, and it changes. So another point why embodiment is so important is because we can use it as this tool for quantum growth, that we are not just like steadily moving through like talking things out and figuring things out for ourselves. We can teach our body how to source, how to generate feelings itself, and how to occupy this next level of ourselves or these other elements that have lain dormant. So one thing that really lights me up in the world is archetypal psychology. If you're familiar with the works of Carl Jung or Marion Woodman, Marie-Louise von France, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, you don't, if this is your kind of thing, then like those are some names. I wasn't trying to like name drop, but and archetypes are these sort of models, these like deep patterns that we have through society. So when I say mother or warrior, almost everybody has some understanding of what that means, and we can feel that strain in ourselves. So we have these archetypes, and for the feminine, there has been in a lot of Western society less access to feminine archetypes, because most of scripture or like Buddhist teachings or whatever is really in the domain of the masculine. So when we start to look at feminine archetypes, then we can start to look at maybe the thing that is next calling for us to be able to embody it, to like find it in ourselves. I deeply believe that part of our work here is to have access to more power, to have access of more ways of being. And sometimes we look at other people and they might be like really brave and like fighting for this cause, and we're like, well, I just got this warrior thing going on and I don't have it. But we all do. Sometimes they're just laying dormant. in ourselves. And so we can use embodiment to start to work with those, like feel how that feels in our body and imagine how it would be to express it, and then start to express it on our body level instead of just using our mind to tell ourselves messages of how to do it. So one example of this would be like the lover, okay, as an archetype. I'm going to use this one because I have a really easy access to transition here. Or like lover, like Aphrodite. Or one of my very favorites is Kali. She is like the divine mother in Hindu tradition of like destruction. She burns down anything that is not love. And for most of us, when we work with this wild woman archetype, we also encounter this essence of Kali. We have like this rage. I'm like, what do I do with this? Anyhow, back to the lover. I was in a program a few years ago with one of my longtime coaches, and she was talking about like the lover archetype being able to move from like Athena, like warrior, get things done in our lives, a more masculine essence, to Aphrodite and be like soft and flowy and like loving. And I was like, I don't have that one. And it's so funny to me because sometimes people think of that as like this classic femininity, like you're in like floral pink robes and you're doing nice things for people. And I was like, I don't, that's doesn't live here. Even like hugging people, I was like pretty distant and like, I just want to get stuff done. I got goals. And so I practiced working with the lover archetype. Like, how would that feel? How, when I'm just on my own, can I be more like soft and loving? And not that I want to be there all the time or that that's inherently better. It's just having access to that. And so that really came at the level of the body. Like, can I sip herbal tea while I'm in like a bath? And can I allow myself to like receive help, to connect? Can I find where the space of my heart is? What does it feel like when I'm leading with my heart, with like this rose love? Whereas Kali for me was learning how to drop down into like my womb space, my second chakra, my like deep pelvic bowl, and to live with like fierceness, to find the part of me that instead of people pleasing was like, not okay. No, that's not fine. This I will not tolerate anymore. So working with archetypes is a really classically feminine path, and I love it. I love it. And we are going to use that a little bit today. Better write that down so I don't forget. But another component is that so much of what we feel like we are capable of or can offer, or how we can interact with people, comes through understanding our nervous system. And when we feel like we are threatened, a lot more for men, because women's nervous systems actually function differently. For men, it really hits into fight or flight more often. For women, it looks a lot more like tend and befriend, freeze or fawn, that we want everybody to be okay. And when we start to understand and to look at our body first, then we can start to source our own safety. We work with this in Home Fire Soul, but we start to source our own safety for ourselves. And from that place, when our nervous system feels safe and supported, then we often have more courage to speak up, to create what we want, to set boundaries with people, for ask for what we need, to receive support. And that happens through the level of the body. In Kimberly Johnson's work, she wrote a book called Call of the Wild, which is so good. She talks about learning how to inhabit and work with our mammal bodies, to complete stress responses, to allow ourselves to like move energy. So when we're doing that today, we are working with like the mammalian part of ourselves that needs to like shake to come back to neutral, or to like sprint and let off energy, instead of just stay in the semi-stressed, scattered spot all the time. And when I started working with this, a lot of my symptoms, this is not an argument or an accusation or proposal or anything like that. A lot of my ADHD symptoms really calmed down because I could be more focused. I was like more centered instead of like scattered because my nervous system was fried. And an additional point of this is when we learn how to like be in our animal body, we not only get to ask it what it wants, what it loves, and use that as a source of pleasure, we also can remember that we are not just like passive receptors of our lives and our relationships. And when we work with embodiment, then we teach our body first. So oftentimes we're going through our lives and our relationships like, is everybody fine? Is everybody fine? And we are like contracted. And we're sucking in our stomach and we're trying not to take too much room and we're spending all of our time trying to be smaller. And when we work through our body and then we remember that we can be creators of our lives, that we are not only just like prey, but we can also be like hunters, and we can also be the active subjects of our lives. And so starting to take up more space in how we move just in a practice makes us take up more space in how we live. So much of the time, if you think of your body as a whole generator, okay, from here down, this is where we get our energy. And if we're only dropping this far, if we're only moving this far, then we only have access to like a cylinder or two of what we're capable. And when we start to like move through our body, and open up all those cells, like move our awareness, then we have access to so much more energy. And that requires courage to drop in and feel what's there. That there's a TED Talk by a PhD psychologist, and she talks about how there's literal results about how much better people do in job interviews, etc., by occupying these like taking up space, like Wonder Woman poses in the bathroom. And when we practice that in our lives, it changes how we move through our lives without having to just tell ourselves through the realm of our mind all the time. So embodiment is not just about how we express it. It is using our body as a tool, but it's also entering through our body to express differently. It's this really beautiful cyclical movement through all of it. So our body isn't just a shell. It's not just an inconvenient. It's like the point of us being here is to learn how to harness this physicality, to drop in to this nearly endless source of energy and wisdom and intuition that we have with us all the time. So today, we are going to use a practice from Mama Gina. I don't even know her whole name. She wrote a book. Gina, Regina, something. I'll post it. And it involves dancing. And she says, this is her practice, to pick 3 songs. So the first, we move rage, because often that is staying on top of everything. And we could be like, if you're really mad at your kids, we don't really have a place for that to go, because you don't want to like yell at your kids, and sometimes it slips out because it gets leaky because we're not moving it. Or maybe you're mad at the whole state of the world, or that you haven't been able to see your family in a long time. Like whatever that is, often rage is blocking that radiance, abundance, joy that's underneath. So we were first going to move the rage and the anger. And then in another song, we are going to move the grief. So give your sadness some space, some love. Whatever your disappointment is, I will do something with this, but something I've been thinking of so much lately is that our capacity to live to our fullest expression, to live our dreams, is equal to our capacity to be with our own heartbreak. Because we often think to ourselves, like, I don't want to risk this. What if I'm disappointed? But if we know that we know what to do with that sadness, that we can express it through us, we can move it, then we can take these risks that aren't so scary. We can redefine relationships. We can start businesses. We can say what we need to our mom, like whatever that is. It's so proportional to our ability to be with our heartbreak. So, second time, we are going to move grief. And the third, once we've kind of gotten some of those big slabs um, off of who we actually are, the third is where we're going to move radiance, turn on. This is where you get to be like lit up by your life. And even if in this moment, after moving those two emotions, it still is difficult to source, then we get to use our body to create that. So by choosing the song that you want to work with, one that like makes you smile no matter what, then even if that joy, that eros, that like soul essence of you is hard to reach, um, the music, practicing it through your body will help you integrate it more fully into your life, to use it as a source of fuel. So this week we are dancing. You can use, will include a link to my Divine Feminine Rising playlist that has like all the faces, I think all the flavors of the archetypes of the Divine Feminine. And so that might give you some ideas. I will also include some ideas that you might want to use, but please personalize this practice and use what is most helpful for you. Use what will help you move these feelings. And that might look very differently from mine, but this belongs to you. It is your route into your body. And if I invite you to journal after, use your movement, your body as the main vehicle of the practice. But journal after if you want. You might have really old stuff come up. You might have ancestral stuff come up. When we are really working into what lives in our tissues, then we can be surprised. We can be sad. We can be joyful. But let whatever it is arise. And if you need to go slowly, if there is some deep trauma work there, then just experiment, move lightly through it. There is no need to force. Our nervous system is also happy when we do things incrementally. So if that's what you need, if you need to just like sit in a chair and move to feel safe, then please do what works for you in your body. And I'd love to hear how it goes. Love you.